the Evolution Security Podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is Aaron Davis, 1/3 of the EvoSec crew. We would like to welcome you to our show. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, we have a fun show for you because Mr. Craig Douglas joined us again. Now, two quick things before we get into the interview with Craig. We wanted to remind you that here in a couple of weeks, July 16th through the 18th, we are hosting Cecil Birch here in Tulsa, Oklahoma at Clinch Martial Arts. Now, in addition to the amazing instruction that we're going to get from Cecil Birch, there are also going to be some special guests that are going to show up. And I'll tell you what, some of them have actually been on this show. So by the time this show airs, we might have a couple more slots open. So go to iacombatives.com and look on Cecil's seminar schedule, and you should be able to find out information about how to get in contact with us and get signed up for the class. And we also want to remind you to go on to iTunes and give us a rating. We are a 5-star rated show. We are proud of that, but we would like to get some more ratings because that helps us bubble up to the top, and other listeners such as you, they can find us like that. And also do us a favor and write a quick review. Give us some feedback on what you're enjoying about the show and maybe even what we can do better. Now I want to also ask you to do the same thing for the podcasts that you enjoy. Podcasts such as American Warrior Society and Self-Defense Gun Stories, Jocko and the Art of Manliness. Those are some of my favorite shows, and I've written reviews and given ratings for all of them. So I just implore you to do that. It helps all of us that have this labor of love that we go through to put these shows out, because we love the information, we love learning ourselves, and we love making sure that our listeners get the same information that we love to soak up. So please do that. We would appreciate it, and I'm sure the other shows would appreciate it also. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get into this interview.
We would love to welcome to the show again for a second visit, because he was so good the first time, Mr. Craig Douglas. How you doing tonight, Craig?
Hey, Brian, I'm doing well. How are you, sir? Thanks for having me back.
Oh man, I'm doing great, and I'm stoked to talk to you some more because you're one of our favorite guests, and you definitely bring it when you show up. And of course, Eric and Aaron are here. Really cool that we got everybody online tonight, guys. How you doing?
Man, doing great here. I'm so glad Aaron got to make it as well. I know he's on vacation, so man, thanks for showing up, Aaron.
Yeah, guys, I'm glad to be here. I'm on the beach with my family. Had to kind of make it happen, but every now and then you may hear my family pop in here. But hey, there's my wife.
Hey, there's Becky.
So yeah, glad to be here, guys. Always great to talk to Craig.
Oh yeah. Well, we're going to talk about some fun subjects tonight and hopefully get some knowledge out of this man. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Eric to get us started.
Well, Craig, it's wonderful to have you on the show again, and frankly, the support that you provide us, your instruction to us over the years has been phenomenal. So again, thank you so much for carving out some time out of your busy life.
Sure, man. Absolutely. Guys like you are why I'm successful. So if I have time, I'll always give it to guys like you, man. Thank you very much for having me back.
Well, Craig, real quick, we don't have to go over the lengthy version, but for our listeners that may not know who you are, and if they don't know who you are, they've been probably under a rock in the self-defense industry. Not to insult anybody, but they should know who you are by now. But give us a short bio.
Yeah, man. So I am Craig Douglas. I'm a retired sheriff's deputy from South Mississippi. I did a total of 21 years on the job in my law enforcement career. Most of that was in drugs and SWAT. I retired in 2011 to do training full time. This is my 10th year of doing training full time. It's my 19th year of doing training under the brand Shivworks, and I teach globally in 11 countries outside of the U.S., 46 states inside the U.S., 4 branches of the military, 5 federal law enforcement agencies, and I have a standing contract within the intelligence community. I'm best known for the entangled, meaning clinch or ground fight range problem with weapons, and other niche areas of tactical instruction, solo structure movement, fighting in cars, things like that. It's a deep, dark hole that's generally unexplored in training. That's usually where I dwell.
Well, Craig, I think that, of course, all three of us in EvoSec are alumni of your courses. And I can say extreme close quarter concepts for folks in the audience that are not tracking that. We're not going to dive deep into that class tonight, but that is a life-changing class that just throughout the years that Craig's been doing it, if you want to learn how to deal with the worst problems, the entangled gunfight, the entangled knife fight, and also learn in a pressure environment, which, you know, when we really get to brass tacks, you have to be practicing under pressure. And Craig is the man. He and his folks in the Shivworks Collective as well. Please seek them out. That said, Craig, we kind of want to change gears and give you a break from the normal tonight, if that's okay.
Sure.
So we were extremely excited, and I have to digress a second. All three of us are we love the carbine. We also realize that the rifle is actually very low on the totem pole of necessities. We'd like to kind of hit on your thoughts on the carbine as it relates to civilian self-defense. However, we were super excited to see you start the beta class Entangled Rifle Options. And so we kind of like to take a stab at that tonight, if that's okay. Tell us about Entangled Rifle Options and how's that going, and what should folks expect out of that?
Okay, so Entangled Rifle Options, as I call it, right now is a one-day class. And going back to the content, the content itself is nothing new. I've been teaching the content to select military groups since 2009. However, it was always specific to them, their gear, their mission. So the general ideas were there, but it was really tailored. And you know, as 2020 unfolded, and particularly the Rittenhouse shooting, I had a lot of people asking for, you know, what does a ground fight or a clinch look like with a rifle? And since I had that content in a team based closed enrollment format, what I decided to do was start exploring what would the open enrollment version of look like that. Well, what would that look like? And you know, and mixed enrollment is challenging because before, you know, I could really tailor the techniques to what these guys were carrying, what they were doing, and now in a mixed enrollment class where I may have, I don't know, a soft guy paying on his own dime, who's going to be wearing a helmet and is going to have a slung rifle. What are his TTBs and capabilities and techniques? What do they look like in the same class with a civilian who may not have a sling, who may have a shotgun that's 18 or 20 inches, who's not wearing a helmet? Basically, the class, the beta class that I did this year, were to figure out the convergences and time management, because I knew what I wanted to do. But it was trying to figure out what a mixed population class would look like, as far as the TPPs. So we did one in Florida, and I was probably, and it was all alumni that came to the class. I think I had a couple of guys who were SWAT guys that had not trained with me before. But I wanted alumni feedback, and it was a beta class. I didn't charge a lot of money for it. And Scott and I went down to Florida, and we did this one-day class. And, I didn't know at the time, do I have one day, a day and a half worth of content? I know as the class progresses and gets leaner, my time management will get better. How much content do I actually have? So that's what we did. Got the beta done. As far as the content goes, I still don't have the evolution pinned in the way I want it. I'm waiting on some gear right now from UTM, the silent blank rounds, which we're going to be using quite a bit. And then there's safety issues when grappling with rifles, when you have muzzle striking options and guys possibly getting hit in the face with the upper receiver of a gun, that kind of stuff. They're all kind of things to figure out as far as that piece goes. So I'm probably going to run another beta in September in Wisconsin, and in that class I'll do an evolution that may not represent ultimately what the final evolution looks like, but the last new class I premiered was 2010, and that was VCast. I don't just throw classes up on my website, and I don't do Inosanto seminars, where I present content one time and lose interest and move on and do something else. That's just not the way I work, and that's not the way Shivworks, works. We have very few things that we do with a very deep knowledge base, and through repetition, the class gets cleaner and clearer and more lucid. So that's where that class is at right now. It's going to be a one-day class. I'm probably not going to travel for a single day's training. So what it looks like I'm going to do is Scott and I presented a one-day car fighting class for a Tier 1 Special Missions unit here recently. And basically what I did was I took the Friday evening vehicle agility component from VCast and paired it with the Sunday afternoon interior vehicle fighting portion with a little bit more repetitions and some car elements that I had not done before that kind of look like a lot of what happened in 2020. So I've got about 8 hours of content with that, and I'm going to call that Interior Vehicle Combatives course. So the idea will be that it'll be a Shivworks, and I'm going to make both of them alumni classes. So it's essentially going to be 2 one-day classes. I'll probably do the entire weekend, a 2-day weekend for $550, or somebody has the option of doing a single day for say $325, and each day will respectively represent 8 to 10 hours worth of training. So you get a little break if you do both days, Saturday, Sunday, or if you only want to do one day, then the one day is available. So that's how I think I'm going to pair and partner ERO. Is I'm going to pair it with the Interior Vehicle Combatives course for a full 2-day week.
Oh wow, that's man. You're definitely teasing us here, Craig. Now you said that you're not going to travel doing that. Are you going to do that close to your home, or how's that going to work?
No, what I said was I'm not going to travel for a single day's
training.
Gotcha.
I understand. My apologies. Okay, that makes sense.
No. So they will always be. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a minimum head count for each day, but those two will always be. And giving the student a break for taking the entire 2 days versus, because you may have people that just want the rifle training, you may have people that just want the car training, and I think. As 2020 is borne out, I think the rifle stuff and the car stuff in and around cars, that's very interesting to people. Certainly. And I already have coursework that predates, all the crazy of 2020 that I'm just kind of reformatting, reshuffling, and offering as alumni only courses. And they will be alumni only courses. And more I'm interested in focusing on alumni.
Well, those classes sound incredible, Craig. I can't wait to get into it. I'm sure that Brian and Aaron are thinking the same thing. They sound incredible as far as content goes, and a paradigm shift of what we've been doing over the years. But again, it's still the kind of content that we expect from you, Craig. That sounds awesome.
Yep. Like I said, I don't just roll classes out. I mean, I have 4 open enrollment classes, right now, those 2 notwithstanding. And the last one I premiered was 11 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not just going to crank and churn out classes and put content out just to put content out. But when I feel there's a need, and, there is definitely with this content, then, we'll do it. And I won't, just rubber stamp it. And that's why the beta iterations are so important. That's why I'm very explicit about it being a beta course. And especially with alumni, letting them know, hey, look, the way I'm teaching this today for the first time open enrollment does not represent the final iteration of the coursework. So I'm very, very clear because at this point with alumni especially, there's a high expectation that I'm on my mark, I manage time, there's a cogent beginning, middle, and end. That's the standard of Shivworks, and that's why I'm very, 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 explicit with them about, hey, this is what the class is right now. You're on the ground floor. It's developing. Give me feedback on the content. Be a part of the process because you know what the standard is, and help me make it better.
Cool stuff, man. And that makes me happy to be an alumni as well.
Yeah.
I when you're talking about your courses, and there's one that we had talked about previously about if there was another Amos going to happen, and there was a building near where I live and work that was a decent size with a lot of corridors and offices, and they just crushed it last week, and I was like, man, why couldn't you have just let us use that for a weekend before you knocked it down?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and this is a hard class to schedule, right? And the site requirements are difficult. It really they always book out within like a day and a half. So yeah. And I love teaching that class. I really do. I enjoy teaching Amos because it's a true tactics class without the distraction of range work, and I think those are rare. So
yeah, well. One of the things, and you even touched on it briefly there, was, you got a guy showing up, doesn't even have a sling. I can't take credit for this, and I can't remember who I heard it from, but, we were having a conversation, and like, well, what's, if you had to pick one accessory for your AR, because everybody hangs too much crap off their gun, but what's the one thing you would say that you must have? And the instant answer was a quality sling.
Yeah.
And that the guy I was talking with even said, I would put that before your optics even. That's you can't just carry your gun around like that. No different than like when we talk about having a holster for your handgun, having a sling for your rifle is critical. What do you like to use, and what are the features of a sling that you would encourage someone to bring to a course like that?
I like the Blue Force Gear Vickers slings still quite a bit. They're simple, they're lightweight, they're easy. A lot of the rifle retention options that I teach, the immediate action procedures specifically that I teach for a muzzle up or a muzzle down rifle grab is predicated largely on a properly adjusted high quality sling to make it work. Now, there are other ways that you can retain your rifle, but it's really difficult to do that without sweeping other people in close proximity. And the technique that I teach is predicated on sling tension and sling pressure and a properly adjusted sling. So, a good mounting system, QD mounts. And other than that, it's really your preference. I don't really care, but we do quite a bit, and I like the ability to quickly adjust the sling to give it a little bit more tension or a little bit less tension. depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So, yeah, man, I like the Blue Force Gear slings. I think they're the Vickers sling specifically. There's the 221 sling is pretty nice. I like the ability to go from 1 point to 2 point, especially if you're working in and out of vehicles with PDWs and things like that. I like that sling quite a bit. I really do. I like the
Nice.
versatility.
Well, and I'm not surprised to hear you say that either.
Yeah.
That's kind of the direction I expected it, because although I use and hand out for people that are working here with me, we'll use some Magpul stuff or whatever because it's convenient, it's easy, it clicks in and out, and the cuties work. But in a harsh environment, I don't think that's a good choice.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, hey, Craig, Aaron here. You mentioned a little bit of it earlier that the Rittenhouse shooting kind of brought up some interest in all the craziness in 2020. Can you kind of expound on that drive that maybe it seemed like, those of us that kind of see what you present, on social media and, et cetera, and what you're up to, it definitely seemed like you kind of started talking a little bit more about carbine and what's your philosophy when it comes to how important or how viable the carbine is for the civilian, and again, if you could touch on maybe some of the 2020 drivers that brought this about more in your teaching.
Yeah, man. I think, we've seen a surge in gun sales and gun ownership since the 2016 presidential election on both sides. On both sides of the political spectrum. There's been people have been arming themselves, and then as 2020 bore out, we saw a lot of armed public demonstrations, some peaceable, some not. And I think more people bought guns. And then we saw, civilians coming out and standing in their front yard with carbines facing hostile crowds of potential assailants. If you look at what happened with the McCloskeys, in Missouri, right, wrong, or indifferent, whether they should or shouldn't have gone out there, that's an observable example of someone, armed with a long gun and looking at a whole bunch of people that are angry at them in their home, standing in their front yard. We saw the Rittenhouse shooting. That's the first, that I'm aware of. That's the first citizen-based rifle shooting that's been captured on video. And I don't think it looked like what anybody thought a civilian rifle fight would look like, right? I think people pictured, the LA riots where, okay, well, I'm going to go on the rooftop and I'm going to start popping people, and pick them off. No, actually, it was essentially a foot pursuit, a kid being chased. It went close quarters really quick. He went into an unorthodox shooting position. He shot at contact distance, and it probably, like most things, it didn't look anything like what people thought a citizen fight would look like. And granted, this is an example of one, but I think everyone pictured a rifle fight by a citizen as being a proactive event versus a reactive event. And the Rittenhouse shooting was a reactive event. Yes, he had the gun, but he was on the receiving end of all that, right? And that's a very different kind of fight. That looks more like a citizen pistol fight, right? So I haven't seen any content organized around that. And since I'm the ECQ extreme close quarters guy, I mean, I've been doing rifle-based grappling for a while with the military, with three branches of the military, Army, Navy, and the Marine Corps. I've done coursework for the Army, Navy, and the Marine Corps on rifle-based grappling since 2010. Wow. So that content's been there. But, there are very specific things such as, buddy aid and prying people off, prying teammates off other people, transitioning into flex cuffing and things like that aren't as relevant for citizens. But the entanglement component certainly is. So the team-based work, maybe not so much. There might be some relative to, if you're using a rifle, and this may expand into a day two at some point, using a rifle to, what does it look like if you're armed with a rifle and you're in a crowd of people and somebody snatched up one of your kids, or your teenager is in a fight with three other teenagers. He's on the bottom end of a boot party getting stomped by a bunch of kids. You've got a rifle surrounded by even more hostile people. What does that problem look like? There are a number of places I could take this as far as worst case scenario goes. And that's what I'm wanting to do. But still in all, I'm not seeing coursework. And the other thing too is, the gear that supports that coursework. You need UTM bolts, you need silent blank rounds, you need marking cartridges, you have to be able to take impact. What if somebody gets hit in the face with a muzzle? Do they have the proper protective gear? How do you account for falls on realistic surfaces with rifles sandwiched in between you and someone else? That's a big problem. It's one thing to fall, entangled, which is bad enough. It's another thing to fall entangled with a rifle swinging around and banging. Now the injury rate goes up even more. So that's none of that content has been even touched on publicly, and that's what we're starting to do. And I know, probably as soon as somebody hears this podcast, they're gonna think, wow, maybe I should start doing that. Maybe you should, or maybe you shouldn't, actually, because I know how long it's taken for me to get ECQC from the days of beating the snot out of each other in motorcycle helmets in backyards and garages and not caring about whether we got hurt or not, to actually making it a cogent class where the injury rate is lower than the average flag football team. That's taken a long, long time to get that class safe, realistic, effective, and teachable. So now we're going down that road with rifles. So I don't know. It'll take as long as it takes, man. It will.
Well, Craig, if I could add something to that, thinking of just ourselves, just the three of us, we're alumni of multiple carbine classes over the years, and we know that those classes lack the content that you're describing, and that's why I think that we're all excited about it, because we know the content that you bring in the ECQC environment, and we know that is something that we lack in our carbine capabilities. So, man, just hearing you describe your thought process through it is why it just reassures us that, man, we're pumped about it for sure. And I think that you're closing a gap that's extremely important.
Thanks, man. It's interesting, and like I said, I think it's more relevant than ever. I think all of us are questioning. Like I said, I think the Rittenhouse event was pretty pivotal. I really do, as far as what can happen with a citizen and a rifle. What does that look like? And there's no training for that. There hasn't been. So, yeah, and I'm not saying certainly every rifle fight's going to look like that, but that one did.
It sure did. And civilians, this is something that I've kind of come to a realization being a former soldier and I know you are as well. I have really rethought, where does my carbine fit in my personal defense paradigm? And it doesn't look like what it looked like when I was a soldier.
Yep.
And frankly, as I sit there and think, we're young in what we provide to clients that we have. But as we think about the way we present carbine, I'm not, we're not there yet. Just full disclosure, we haven't ventured there, but it's something that I wouldn't mind doing at some point. But the fact remains is a civilian is not nearly as concerned with beyond 50 yards, because when you start getting, and this, let's just digress a second, unless there's just a horrible breakdown in society, you're going to have a hard time justifying taking a shot beyond some of the civilian distances. If, I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
No, I'd absolutely agree with it. Pat Rogers was the guy, 30 years ago, that started looking at, hey man, 50 in, maybe 100, maybe 100, maybe 100. That's about it, and I think, the wars, as they started happening and things started flipping from Iraq to Afghanistan, and you saw longer engagements, you saw kids getting out who, had all kinds of fruit salad on their chest and triple canopies on their shoulders, hanging shingles out and coming back with their rifle fight experiences. That kind of steered the industry back towards, the average person, being capable at 2, 3, 4, 500 yards. And, that's just not what it looks like. That's not what it looks like in I haven't seen any long distance, citizen carbine engagements. I mean, there could be anecdotal stuff, in a place like Wyoming or Texas or whatever. But I mean, for the most part, I think these things are being used inside of 50 yards. I think there's a good chance that there's a lot of movement and scrambling, like in the Rittenhouse event where he's being chased. Maybe you fall, you have to shoot in these weird positions that may not even involve you getting your optic up to your eye. I mean, if you look at that initial shooting with Rittenhouse, that was that the guy was on the muzzle,
which kind of points towards the philosophy behind the number 2 position, right? I mean, we got to develop some indexed fighting position with the carbine. Maybe that. Yep. Well, Craig, man, this is awesome, an awesome discussion, and as what we would expect, what we would expect out of your wisdom. So I want to change gears a little bit. Let's talk about pedagogy for a second, and okay. I'll frame it this way. So, regarding your influence in the industry, so I'll just hit on a few people that are huge influences in my life. Namely, to start with, is Mike Brown. Right. Mike Brown has said to me several times that one of the most important attributes that he got from you was learning how to teach. We've had everybody in the Shivworks collective on the show except for Chris Fry, which we've talked to him and we're going to get him on the show. But almost every single one of the guys in the collective talk about learning how to teach from you has been a pivotal point in their life. And I'll go further to say that Tom Givens has been on our show and has spoke highly about your pedagogy and influence to him. And frankly, I just recently took the instructor development course back in November. Cecil hosted that class. What a wonderful time and excellent learning. And in the adult learning model section of the course, Tom spoke about you highly again. And I think that I think it's important to just kind of hit on that is your development as an instructor, is this something that do you just have a natural knack, or I know it's the years of instruction, but is this something that you have thought on and studied and looked at? What with all these influences that you've had in the field, can you kind of hit on that? Is that something that you even think about, or is that just something that you have a gift for?
No. It's something I think about, and I don't know if I had a gift for teaching per se. I've taught something regarding physical skills, physical combative skills specifically, since I was a child in single digits. I mean, I was a Taekwondo prodigy in 1974, and I used to go after school to kids' Taekwondo class. Then I started eating dinner with my instructors, who had a little apartment that attached to their dojo, and I'd do the adult class, and I did that, and that was basically babysitting. It was daycare for me. And my grandfather and my mom would pick me up, like 8:30 at night, and I'd come home, do a little homework, go to bed. But I started teaching a kids martial arts class probably within, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, maybe. So now it's 1977, 1978. So I'm 9, maybe 10 years old. And I've been teaching some kind of combative motor skill since then on a pretty regular basis, whether it's with or without weapons, whether it's motor skill development, whether it's tactics. So I'm pretty well practiced in that regard. I've taught other people's content, as a martial artist and a certified instructor in a law enforcement system. And then, as I, gained proficiency, competency, and understanding, and developing my own curriculum based on, my experiences and putting things together, taught my own content, and then, I taught my own content initially under, the training modalities that I understood from other coursework. And then, when I kind of realized, hey, I can teach any way I want. I can do anything I want. It's my course, and developing myself as an instructor and understanding how people learn. And a lot of that came through being a police academy instructor and seeing the ineffectiveness of the existing systems that were in place by our state, being certified as a subject matter expert by the state of Mississippi, being allowed to develop curriculum and teach pretty much any way I wanted to, making those changes, having citizens who had no expectation of how, what, and why, other than they wanted it to be good, and being able to push the envelope even more. I'm well practiced. Now, that being said, as my confidence in my personal skills and my teaching skills grew, so did my acumen in teaching, and so did my understanding of, what it is that makes a good teacher. I think there are a lot of guys who have good technical understanding of content and curriculum, and even they do things like write lesson plans, and they're very ordered and rigid on how they present content, but they're not necessarily good teachers. They lack empathy, and they're not really able to make connections with people. And that's what I see. I think those are probably the most important things. And it took me a while to realize that. Honestly, teaching individuals is a dope deal. And a dope deal is nothing more than selling yourself. So, that all the little hacks that I do, like the name game that you guys are aware of and that we've talked about, those are things that I do to make connection with individuals, and the curriculum brings everything together, and I can connect via the shared experience. Understanding that the experience the experience has to be impactful, and it has to be shared, and it has to be witnessed. Also affects the overall impact of the course on the students. So I can't say I have a knack for teaching. I am not a social gregarious extrovert by birth or childhood or socialization. That's all been grown into, and it's practiced, and as I grew up and went from a child to a boy to a man, those things got better. So I can't say I have a natural gift for teaching, but I think I've got some natural attributes that make me an impactful teacher. Does that make sense?
It does, Craig. And I would tell you though, there's quite a few guys that I just named that would argue that you do have some natural acumen, but I would say
maybe I do, and it's a chicken or the egg thing, right? I mean we've gone into my past history of being a juvenile delinquent, of being the scared the scared skinny kid with the birthmark who was getting beat up and sand kicked in his face, and that's why I got in martial arts. I mean, I was the last person who would be standing confidently in front of a group of people all over the world and presenting content that people literally hang on to every word I'm saying. I would have never envisioned that about myself. So when I was 15 years old, or even when I was 25 years old, and I was going through the motions, and I was a decent teacher, but I mean, compared to now, certainly not.
Well, and Craig, what I would add, and I'm not trying to at all say that your experience isn't a contribution, because it absolutely is. I know that your pedagogy development is absolutely, the majority of it is simply your experience. So yeah, that's a great representation. I was hoping that we could draw that out for the audience. So man, excellent discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And my experience, certainly my experience as far as, my high risk experience being in a high risk profession and having, lived violence and applied violence and had violence applied to me. I understand both sides of it. I understand, taking somebody down and being taken down, man, at the worst possible levels. So, and that's anecdotal too, but I have enough. And I think the main thing was the few experiences I did have, I learned from. And I was able to translate, because I already had a good teacher set. I was able to translate that into something that mattered and affected the coursework and was meaningful, versus just a war story or something that, maybe had meaning, but I couldn't translate. There are a lot of guys that have a lot of interesting things that they learned that they can't figure out how to pass on to others.
So we want to take a second to talk about Origin real quick. As I always mention, they just make the cleanest, most excellent supplements, but I am still stuck on this path key. And as I promise, we're going to do a full review on it, but I've been rolling in it for a few weeks now. And, I got to tell you, compared to any other product that I see the other guys wearing, any other product that I personally owned, that thing is spectacular. And the compression gear underneath just makes me feel that much more confident. So, we'll keep it short, but that's, I love their products, and they're made here in the US. So if you're looking for a gi, I would give them a shout. And, of course, Look in the show notes for a discount code.
Awesome. So let's sit here and talk about Tenacore real quick. So I asked a couple of weeks ago about, folks that are carrying in their normal holster. I asked the question, do you know for certain that your holster could hold up against a gun grappling event? When somebody's trying to rip your holster out, do you know for certain that holster is going to last? Well, for certain, Jeff Mao and his crew over at Tenacore most assuredly know that it does work, because with our esteemed guest this evening, Craig has seen Jeff and his crew show up at every single ECQC that we have hosted. And those guys know that their gear works, and they are definitely mixing it up with us, and we definitely know that their gear works. So if you're interested in their holsters, they just released some new mag pouches. Please use EvoSec at checkout, and you'll get 10% off.
Hey, Craig, Aaron here. Interesting enough, about November last year, I decided that I would go ahead and buy a red dot for a pistol and start putting that together, because me being 47 and my vision not being all that great, I decided I would see if that could help me out. So I went ahead and got one, and then I started working with it, and then hitting YouTube, etc., and trying to learn what I could and see what kind of instructors were out there. And I stumbled across Scott Jedlinski, or Jedi as he's known. And funny thing is that noticing on social media that you took his class, and so we've been talking about red dots quite a bit, but it'd be kind of fun to chat with you about it. Your experience with red dots, and how that class went, and maybe talk some gear for the fun of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny how that turned out. Scott is busy, if not busier than I am. So it just happened that he reached out on a text message and said, "Hey, man, I'm going to be teaching a class in Gulfport, to a Leo instructor class. Are you home?" And I looked at my schedule, and I looked at the dates, and it was during the week, and I was home. I said, "Yeah, man, you want to stay here and stay here at the house?" And he said, "Yeah, man, do you want to do the class?" I'm like, I don't have a red dot." He said, I'll bring you one. And I was like, "Well, shit, yeah, I do, actually, yes." And I've been wanting to do that for a while, because, I didn't have as informed of an opinion about them as I do now. And it's still relatively uninformed. I mean, I've only had one class, and I've got a 509T that I haven't mounted yet. And I haven't put time and work into one as a carry pistol or anything like that. But I do have a class with Scott. So what I wanted was basically a kind of a 10,000 foot view of the dot, and how to use it and best practices. And Scott delivered. He did a really good job on the class. He managed time well. I got everything I wanted out of that class. He did a really good job of staying in his lane, with and telling people, hey, look, there were even, there were several times, I got to give him high marks for this, that a police officer would ask him, "Well, hey, if I'm holding somebody at gunpoint, should I have?" And Scott would just cut him off right there and say, "Look, I don't hold people at gunpoint. I can tell you how to look at the dot and look at the target and things like that, but I can't tell you whether you should or shouldn't be pointing a gun at somebody. So I'm not going to get into that." And he did a really good job of that. I thought that was exceptionally well done. And I think he probably even shied away from things that he could have spoken on, but nonetheless, I enjoyed it. I really did. I got a lot out of the class. He was a really good instructor, very simpatico. And then he'd come back to the house and we'd talk about things in the evening. So The class for me was exactly what I needed when I needed it. As far as my opinion on gear, I like the 509T. I saw several dots, and again, this could be user error, there could be a learning curve, things like that. But I saw several dots that shifted or went down during the course for various reasons. Most of it was probably user induced, but I think it's, I suspect that the closed emitter dots are probably better for hard use than the open emitter stuff. So I still have reservations about a dot, and I'll go ahead and say what I said 2 years ago that drew the ire of a whole bunch of people. I don't think a dot makes a significant difference for the average person who's not looking for trouble in the average fight that they're going to be in. I really don't. I really don't. And I would put a dot right up there with, significant capacity, of a handgun. I think probably for the average person, 10 rounds is probably going to mostly get it done for the average guy. So, yeah, I'm kind of still dot ambivalent. I understand them more, but do I think they're vital or necessary or the wave of the future or anything like that? Nah, I'm still not there. I'm still not
Got
there.
it. Yeah, the way I have seen it, I think that if someone is a good shooter already and like me has not the greatest vision, it can make a huge difference for them. If
Yep.
it's because it did for me. I mean, it has been a game changer for me.
There you go.
But and that's also not just normal shooting. It's in competition, etc. How I'm doing in drills. Almost the fun part of shooting. But again, it's made a huge difference for me. My wife, she shot mine, and it helped her immensely. So I think, again, if you're a good shooter and you've got your iron sights down, you've got vision, it may not make a big difference for you. But again, someone like me that needs help with my vision, and then on the other end of it, someone like my wife that's not a real experienced shooter but had issues understanding how to run the multiple planes of running iron sights, the red dot helped her
Right.
a ton. So it's pretty fascinating to me, and I'm pretty stoked about it. But it's great to get your thoughts on it.
Well, there's a discussion about three focal plane shooting versus single focal plane shooting, regardless of the sighting system.
Yeah.
If you listen to the guys who shoot at the highest levels, regardless of regardless of the sighting system they're using, whether it's irons or a dot, they're all looking at the target.
Yeah.
So if that's what's happening, and that's really the way we need to be shooting versus traditional three focal plane shooting, then it calls into question, what's the efficacy of any sighting system or another, as long as you had a reference? I mean, to be quite frank, you could probably, if you wanted to throw in the big dot sights in there, or the idea of an express sight in African big game hunting, all we're looking for is something vaguely to reference on the gun while looking at the target, not the sights themselves. So, if that's what's happening, then our training should probably support that. And then whether we do or don't have more of an advantage with an electronic system versus, an analog system. That to me is a more interesting discussion, because I don't care. I don't care what it is, as far as, no red dot, no mini red dot is ever probably, at least for the foreseeable future, and I would say the next decade, is going to be robust and reliable, as iron sights, So, maybe what we need to do is focus more on looking at the target versus looking at the sights. I think that's a more interesting discussion.
In other words, maybe even change how we're teaching it, and maybe it's going to be controversial, but say we may have been teaching iron sights ineffectively by trying to get people to equal height, excuse me.
Right.
But it's interesting that you say that regarding the highest level shooters looking at the target. We actually had Scott on a couple of episodes ago, and he said that very same thing too. That all these high level shooters are looking at the target.
I think the dot has brought more into focus what we're looking at when we're shooting a handgun. That discussion more than anything else. Are we looking at and it's made it current again and interesting in a way that it wasn't interesting before, because previously it was framed as point shooting, right? And nobody could define what point shooting was, and nobody, we used to have these long debates about, okay, well, when you say point shooting, are you talking about a body index? Do you have some visual referencing of the gun vis-a-vis the target, or is there not any? I always suspect, and I used to have these arguments with proponents of the old World War II point shooting systems, especially when they were talking about like the half hip and the 3/4 hip positions. They would purport that there was no visual referencing of the gun. And what I would say was, okay, what I want you to do then, if that's the case, if you're telling me you really can't see the gun and relate it to the target, I want to see you shoot the way you do, but I want you to take like a 4-foot piece of cardboard, and I want you to make kind of a half circle cutout, and I want you to put that on your neck and then keep that 4 feet of length in front to make sure that you absolutely can't see the gun. And then I want to see you do the point shooting stuff, and I want to see if it looks the same. Because if you look at Bill Jordan, even when he would shoot from the hip, Jordan, if you watch a video of him doing that, would always kind of look down and pick the gun up, even if it was for a split second, in the bottom edge of the foveal cone. So there was some visual referencing there. So, and those debates more and more, would just they'd just spin out, and the guys, wouldn't have the intellectual capacity to really or be interested, because they were so wedded to the history and what the people that came before them said. Yammer. Now I think with dots coming into play, and it being firmly established that, okay, we should be looking at the target, all right, but there's still visual referencing of the gun, and we can see the gun and relate that to the gun. I think that whole discussion now is fresh again. So, if anything, to me, dots have brought that discussion back at a higher, more intellectual, more cogent level.
No, and I'm gonna kind of fall on your side with that, Craig, where I'm training with one too, just because anybody that's training handguns, we're seeing them pop up, and we need to at least have exposure and proficiency with them. But a dot is not going to change a 0 to 5 yard gunfight.
No,
not a bit.
No, absolutely.
Is in gaming, IDPA, IPSC, absolutely. And they've been using them for years there anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen massive, ugly Seymours on top of open guns that just make me want to puke. But man, that guy can shoot it fast and he can shoot it accurately. That's not a self-defense gun. It's a competition rig that's not meant to carry. So, I'm going to continue to train with one, but not solely. But yeah, it's tough it's giving people an opportunity to enter the arena, and maybe it's a reason they want to do it because they can shoot better that way. But
Yeah.
For the kind of stuff that you teach, it's not that somebody couldn't have it, but it's not going to actually make a difference in a pectoral index for sure.
Well, Craig, so let's go ahead and take a little bit different direction here. We chatted about clothes with you last time, and you kind of lit up when we got to talk about that last time. So maybe we can do a little bit more of that. A month or so ago, I saw some pics of you in a really cool, just perfectly fitted gray suit, just a casual look. I just don't think I've seen a suit fitted that well in a long time. And I'm sure you went to a big process, and you could go into, let me ask it this way. So I don't know if that's your latest suit, if you've had any new suits, but what are you excited about, clothing wise, and maybe you can go into that.
So the gray suit that I think you're talking about is one of my Briones, and it's that brand fits me off the rack exceptionally well.
Wow.
It really does. In a 42 short, the only thing I need to do is get the sleeves adjusted slightly and the trousers pegged, and that's it. It's a great fit for me. Right off the rack. So that's an off the rack suit with a little bit of very, very, very minor tailoring. I think I have the rise adjusted on the trousers just a little bit. But yeah, I love that brand and that particular model of Brioni. Can't remember what it Prometeo, I believe is it. But that's one of my workhorse staple suits. I think I got 3 of them. I've got a navy blue one, and they're all the exact same model, and I got them all at the same place in San Francisco. But still in all, yeah, those are like my workhorse kind of James Bond when I'm going to wear a suit
Nice.
type. Actually, the thing I'm excited about is on the way is a bespoke midnight blue velvet dinner jacket that I had made recently, and it's on its way to me right now. It's got big lapels, and it's a deep, deep, deep midnight navy, almost a black, but it's enough to distinguish you from waitstaff, and it's velvet, and it's gorgeous. And it's got these really cool smoked mother of pearl buttons, and I'm very excited to receive that. That's my latest. That's my latest thing. Is that jacket?
Man, I can now. When you said a bespoke, it now that of course usually means just generally that it's completely custom for you. Is that a brand,
Yes.
or is that just what you're speaking of as the custom aspect?
No, it's completely made. It's completely made for me from scratch. It's cut from a pattern. So this one's Italian, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting that jacket.
Well,
This company has my pattern on file, and I've been wanting I've got a maroon wide whale velvet corduroy jacket, but I wanted a smoother jacket with a little bit of a sheen to it. And they got some gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous velvet in. But I was browsing swatches. I was like, man, I need to have a jacket of that. So we put it together. Yeah,
that's cool. I am literally in the middle of the last maybe few weeks of a new guitar that I ordered 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And so the whole bespoke process is just a blast.
Oh yeah, it is. It's a ton of fun. I don't care what it is, whether it's a jacket, a guitar, or a custom gun. It doesn't matter. Just anything made for you by a human, that requires their attention, care, and detail, which is always expensive. I don't care what it is. It's always going to be expensive. Yeah, man, it's special, man. It's your stuff, and fortunately, I'm at a place in life where I can enjoy that stuff.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So Lauren, the amount of awesome clothing you have, can you ask her for us? Is that one of the things that attracted her to you?
I don't know. I would prefer to think she's attracted to me without clothes than with clothes.
Okay, there we go. Yep, that's what we wanted to hear.
That would be my preference, But nah, man. She's an elegant woman, and she likes to sweet and dine and travel the same way I do, and we make a really good pair. I mean, when we're dressed to the nines, and she dresses as well as I do, and she's as much of a close horse as I am. People turn their heads. They do.
I bet.
mean, I think they turn their heads mainly because we're usually all over each other, and we look like we like each other and are, wound up with each other. But we're a good-looking couple when we present. Yeah, man, she makes me very happy. She's going to be she's coming in this weekend for a Father's Day to see my stepdad, and I've got most of the month of July off, actually.
Man, that's awesome.
So yeah, so I'm going to be spending a lot of that with her. I've got a milk class with AFSOC at the Air Force Academy, but I'm not doing any open enrollment in July. And then in August, it picks back up. But I've got my first class in Hawaii ever.
Wow.
I'll be doing an edge weapons overview out there. And she told me, she said, "You're not going to Hawaii and not taking me." I'm like, "Of course I'm not. Of course I'm going to take you." But we're going to do a week in Hawaii, man. It's going to be a ton of fun.
Where is it at in Hawaii?
It's on the Big Island.
Oh, nice.
It's on the Big Island. So we're going to fly in there, and I've got a weekend EWO, and I think we'll be there from like a Wednesday to a Wednesday, because I have to come back and I start a closed class with a government client in Maryland. So I'll be doing that for 6 days immediately afterwards. But yeah, man, we got a week in Hawaii, so look forward to some awesome island pics with us in it.
Awesome, man. It's time for me to get the EWO back on myself.
Oh yeah. That's the most physical class I teach, and it's definitely the most physically challenging. It's the punchiest. So yeah, that's a hard class. It is.
Well, man, fun stuff, and cool to get a little insight into the life and times of Craig Douglas.
Thanks, man.
Not just the teacher part. So, but we have taken plenty of your time, and we gotta wrap this up. But man, I'm sure we'll have you on again. But
Sure.
Looking forward to hearing that new class starting up. And I like your idea of that 2-day format, because then if somebody only has the 1 day available, or is only interested in the one segment, they could do that, and it gives you the ability to still have 2 full days of instruction. Man, that's really cool.
Absolutely
Cool. All right, guys. Well, another good show. We'll see you next time.
Take care, Craig.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me back. Always good to connect.
Nice.